The emergency beacon pierced through the void of space with desperate intensity. Captain Zephyr of the Calaxian research vessel. Serenity watched the holographic display with growing horror as the data streams painted a picture of complete devastation across the Outer Rim territories. "Sir, we're receiving distress signals from 17 different systems," Communications Officer Thale reported, his normally steady voice cracking under pressure. "The Vorgan Empire has deployed their extinction fleets. They're not just conquering anymore. They're eliminating entire species." Zephyr's 4 eyes blinked in rapid succession, a sign of extreme stress among his people. The Vorgans had been a threat for decades, but their recent technological breakthrough had made them nearly unstoppable. Their planet-cracker weapons could render entire worlds uninhabitable in mere hours. "What about the Galactic Defense Coalition?" Zephyr asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Scattered or destroyed, sir. The Andromedan fleet lasted 6 minutes against a single Vorgan dreadnought. The Silicon Collective's quantum shields were useless. Even the war-loving Krillians surrendered after losing their homeworld." The bridge fell silent except for the constant stream of distress calls flooding their communications array. Hundreds of civilizations crying out for help, begging for rescue, pleading for salvation that would never come. "There is one option." Science Officer Nira spoke hesitantly from her station. Her tentacles writhed nervously as all eyes turned to her. "The emergency protocols list a species we've never contacted. They're from a system so remote that most consider them myth." "Who?" Zephyr demanded. "Humans, sir. From a planet called Earth in the Sol system. According to our ancient databases, they achieved spaceflight only recently. The records are sparse, but there are some concerning notes." "Such as?" Nira's tentacles coiled tighter around her console. "The observation teams that studied them, most never returned. The few reports we have described them as incomprehensibly violent and dangerously unpredictable. The High Council classified their entire system as a no-contact zone 300 years ago." "Why would we contact a primitive species?" Thale interrupted. "What could they possibly do against the Vorgans?" "The beacon protocol requires us to contact all available species in case of galaxy-wide extinction events," Nira explained. "Humans are listed as potential military assets with a threat rating of—" "Oh. What?" Zephyr leaned forward. "Threat rating, maximum. The only species ever given that classification." Another wave of distress signals flooded their systems. Entire star systems going dark as Vorgan fleets advanced like a cosmic plague. Time was running out for everyone. "Send the beacon," Zephyr commanded. "If we're all going to die anyway, what's the worst that could happen?" The message was simple, broadcast on all frequencies toward the small yellow star humans called their sun. "To any intelligent species receiving this transmission, the galaxy is under attack by an overwhelming force. Billions are dying. If you have any military capability, please assist. Coordinates and tactical data attached." Days passed with no response. The Vorgan advance continued unchecked, consuming world after world. The Serenity had joined a ragtag fleet of refugee ships fleeing toward the galaxy's edge, hoping to find some corner of space the Vorgans hadn't yet noticed. Then the sensors detected something impossible. "Sir," Thale called out, his voice filled with disbelief. "I'm reading massive energy signatures dropping out of hyperspace. Unknown ship configurations, but the power readings they're off the charts." "Vorgans?" "No, sir. The signatures don't match anything in our databases. And, sir, they're heading directly for the largest Vorgan fleet." On the tactical display, dozens of strange ships materialized near the Centauri system, where a Vorgan extinction fleet was preparing to destroy the homeworld of the peaceful Centaurians. The human vessels were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Angular, brutal-looking craft that seemed designed for one purpose only. Are those human ships?" Nira whispered. Before anyone could answer, the communication array crackled to life. A strange, harsh voice filled the bridge, speaking in broken galactic standard. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. We received your distress call. We're here to help." The voice paused, and when it continued, there was something in it that made every being on the bridge shiver despite themselves. "To the hostile force currently threatening innocent civilians, you have exactly 10 minutes to surrender unconditionally. After that, we start shooting, and just so we're clear, we don't take prisoners." Zephyr stared at the tactical display in stunned silence. The human fleet was outnumbered 50-1 by the Vorgans, yet they'd positioned themselves directly between the extinction fleet and the planet below. "Sir," Thale reported, his voice barely a whisper, "the Vorgans are responding. They're laughing. They've sent a message saying they'll enjoy adding human bones to their trophy collections." On the screen, the Vorgan fleet began to advance. Massive dreadnoughts armed with planet-killing weapons moved forward in perfect formation, confident in their superiority. The humans waited until the last possible moment. Then, they opened fire. The first thing Zephyr noticed was the sound, or rather the lack of it. Human weapons didn't make the elegant energy discharges the galaxy was accustomed to. Instead, their ships unleashed streams of what appeared to be solid projectiles moving at impossible velocities. "What are those?" Nira gasped. "Kinetic weapons," Zephyr breathed, reading the sensor data with growing amazement. "They're firing chunks of metal at near light speed, but that's insane. The energy requirements alone—" The human projectiles struck the Vorgan shields like cosmic hammers, shield matrices that had withstood the combined firepower of 3 galactic civilizations simply evaporated under the barrage. The projectiles punched through armor plating that was supposed to be impervious, turning mighty dreadnoughts into expanding clouds of debris. But the humans weren't done. As the surviving Vorgans scrambled to respond, smaller human ships broke formation and accelerated directly toward the enemy fleet. Their velocity indicators showed impossible speeds. They were moving so fast that relativistic effects should have killed their crews. "They're ramming the Vorgan ships," Thale reported in disbelief. "No," Zephyr corrected, watching more carefully. "They're boarding them." The human assault ships punched through Vorgan hulls like bullets through paper. Internal sensors showed armored figures moving through the enemy vessels with terrifying efficiency. The sounds coming over the communication channels were unlike anything the galaxy had ever heard. The sound of humans at war. Within 20 minutes, the entire Vorgan extinction fleet was either destroyed or captured. 5,000 years of galactic military doctrine had just been rendered obsolete by a species most considered primitive. The communication array crackled again. Admiral Chen's voice returned, but now it was directed at the refugee fleet. "Attention civilian vessels. The immediate threat has been neutralized. We're uploading tactical data on Vorgan weaknesses to your databases. We suggest you share this information with any surviving military forces." "Admiral," Zephyr found his voice at last. How is this possible? Our intelligence indicated your species had barely achieved faster-than-light travel." There was a pause before Chen responded, and when she did, Zephyr detected what humans called laughter, though there was no humor in it. "Captain, you made one critical error in your assessment. You assumed that because we're new to space, we're new to war. Humans have been perfecting the art of killing each other for over 10,000 years. We've fought with sticks and stones, swords and arrows, gunpowder and atomic bombs. We've had 2 world wars that killed millions, countless smaller conflicts, and we've never stopped innovating new ways to destroy our enemies." The tactical display showed human ships moving with purpose toward other Vorgan positions, their formation absolutely perfect, their coordination flawless. "We've been preparing for interstellar warfare since before we could even reach our own moon. Every human military academy has studied theoretical space combat for generations. We've run millions of simulations, developed thousands of contingency plans, and built weapons that your galaxy apparently never imagined. Admiral Chen's voice grew colder. The mistake the Vorgans made was the same mistake every bully makes. They assumed that because someone hasn't fought back yet, it means they can't fight back. They've just learned the difference between the absence of violence and the absence of capacity for violence. As the human fleet moved deeper into Vorgan territory, one thing became clear to every survivor watching. The galaxy's greatest predators had just met something far more dangerous than themselves. The age of Vorgan dominance was over. The age of humanity had begun. 3 weeks after the first human intervention, the galaxy watched in stunned fascination as the impossible continued to unfold. Vorgan strongholds that had stood unconquered for centuries fell one by one to human forces that seemed to operate by rules no one understood. Ambassador Kethril of the Galactic Council sat in his luxury shuttle, reviewing intelligence reports that made less sense each time he read them. The humans had agreed to meet with galactic representatives, but their choice of meeting location was concerning. "Ambassador," his aide Velox whispered nervously, "are you certain this is wise? They've chosen to meet us at the site of the Battle of Crimson Nebula." Kethril looked through the viewport at the debris field that had once been the most heavily fortified Vorgan military installation in the galaxy. Twisted metal and frozen atmosphere created a graveyard spanning thousands of cubic kilometers. At the center of this devastation sat a human space station, hastily constructed but radiating power signatures that made his ship's sensors whine in protest. "We need to understand them," Kethril replied, though his own confidence wavered. "The Council demands answers." As their shuttle docked, Kethril noticed details that defied explanation. Human engineering was crude by galactic standards: welded metal where other species used molecular bonding, physical switches instead of neural interfaces, actual wires running along bulkheads. Yet somehow this primitive construction housed technology that outperformed anything the galaxy had produced. Admiral Sarah Chen met them at the airlock, and Kethril immediately understood why other species found humans unsettling. She was smaller than most galactic representatives, but there was something in her eyes, a calculating intelligence paired with barely contained violence, that made his survival instincts scream warnings. "Ambassador," Chen said, extending her hand in the human greeting gesture. "Welcome to Firebase Retribution." "Admiral Chen," Kethril replied carefully, "the Galactic Council is grateful for your intervention against the Vorgans. However, we must discuss your methods." Chen led them through corridors lined with human soldiers. Each warrior wore armor that incorporated Vorgan technology in ways that shouldn't have been possible. The humans had somehow reverse-engineered and improved upon Vorgan weapons in mere weeks. "You have concerns about our efficiency?" Chen asked. "We have concerns about your brutality," Kethril replied honestly. "The reports from Vorgan surrender attempts. Your forces have shown no mercy." They entered a command center where holographic displays showed the galaxy-wide tactical situation. Red markers indicated Vorgan positions, blue showed human forces, and green represented liberated systems. The blue was advancing on all fronts with mechanical precision. "Admiral," Velox spoke up hesitantly, "our intelligence suggests you've developed weapons that violate several galactic warfare conventions. Kinetic bombardment of civilian infrastructure, biological weapons, psychological torture of prisoners." Chen stopped and turned to face them. Her expression never changed, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop. "Let me ask you something," she said quietly. "How many species did the Vorgans exterminate before you contacted us? The exact number is difficult to—" 17 billion sentient beings," Chen interrupted. We've recovered the data from their conquest logs. 17 billion individuals with families, dreams, and futures. The Vorgans didn't just kill them, they made recordings of the exterminations for entertainment. She gestured to a display showing Vorgan trophy rooms filled with artifacts from dead civilizations. You're concerned about our methods? Where was this concern when peaceful species were being systematically murdered? Where were the galactic warfare conventions when the Cathara children were being used for target practice? The command center fell silent, except for the hum of electronics. Chen continued, her voice never rising but somehow becoming more terrifying. Your Galactic Council watched the Vorgans commit genocide for decades. You held meetings, passed resolutions, and filed diplomatic protests while entire worlds burned. And now that someone is actually stopping them, you're worried about our brutality? The difference, Kethril said carefully, is that we believe in proportional response, in the possibility of redemption. Redemption? Chen's laugh was like ice cracking. Admiral, let me show you something. The display changed to show intercepted Vorgan communications from their latest stronghold. Kethril watched in horror as Vorgan commanders discussed their contingency plans, the systematic execution of billions of prisoners if their position became untenable. This is what we discovered at every Vorgan facility we've captured, Chen explained. Dead man switches connected to prisoner camps. If we had followed your proportional response doctrine, if we had given them time to surrender properly, they would have murdered every civilian under their control. But surely there must be some Vorgans who could be reasoned with. We tried that approach initially, Chen interrupted. We offered amnesty to any Vorgan who would surrender peacefully. Do you know how many accepted? 0. Not one. Their response was to execute 1,000 prisoners and send us the recordings. She pulled up another display showing human casualties. We've lost 30,000 soldiers in 3 weeks. Each one of them volunteered for missions they knew were suicide runs because it was the only way to save the civilians you people abandoned. The weight of her words settled over the delegation like a suffocating blanket. Kethril realized he was seeing warfare through human eyes for the first time, not as a political tool or diplomatic leverage, but as a moral imperative. Your species fights wars like it's a game, Chen continued. Rules and protocols and gentlemen's agreements. You fight wars like you expect to have dinner with your enemies afterward. Humans fight wars like we fight cancer, with everything we have, because the alternative is death. But what happens when the Vorgans are defeated? Velox asked quietly. What happens to the galaxy then? Your weapons, your capabilities. Who's to say you won't become the next threat? Chen was quiet for a long moment, studying tactical reports streaming across her displays. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a weariness that hadn't been there before. That's the question, isn't it? You called us because you needed someone to stop the monsters, but what do you do with the monster killers when the monsters are gone? She turned to face them directly. I can't give you guarantees about what humanity will become. I can tell you that every human soldier under my command volunteered to risk their life for people they'd never met, from species they'd never heard of, in systems they can't even pronounce. That should tell you something about who we are. And if your leaders decide differently, Kethril pressed. Then you'll have the same choice you had with the Vorgans, Chen replied bluntly. The difference is we're warning you now. We're not going to pretend to be peaceful explorers while building extinction fleets. If humanity ever becomes a threat to innocent species, we'll tell you exactly what we're planning to do. An alert chimed, and Chen glanced at her displays. Excuse me, gentlemen. We've just received intelligence that the Vorgans are preparing to execute the remaining Centaurian prisoners. I need to coordinate a rescue operation. As they watched, human forces across the galaxy pivoted with inhuman precision, redirecting their assault to prioritize the prison camp locations. The speed and coordination of the response was staggering, as if 30 million individual soldiers were components of a single organism. How do you coordinate forces across such distances? Kethril asked, genuinely curious despite his fears. Quantum communication arrays, Chen replied absently, managing the deployment of forces with casual efficiency. Your species developed the theory centuries ago, but never figured out the practical applications. Humans have a talent for taking impossible theories and making them work. The energy requirements alone should make it impractical. Should, Chen agreed. But when your species has fought each other for 10 millennia, you get very creative about communication and logistics. Half our innovations come from trying to kill each other more efficiently. The displays showed human rapid response teams launching from hidden bases, moving faster than should have been possible. Their ships folded space in ways that violated known physics, arriving at target coordinates in time to prevent the executions. That's impossible, Velox whispered. Those ships moved through 11-dimensional barriers in under 6 minutes. Impossible is a word humans don't recognize, Chen said. We spent our entire history being told things were impossible. Heavier than air flight, space travel, faster than light communication, artificial intelligence. Every time someone proved it was possible anyway. The rescue operation unfolded with brutal efficiency. Human forces punched through Vorgan defenses like they didn't exist, extracted the prisoners, and were gone before the enemy could mount a counterattack. 17,000 Centaurians saved, Chen reported to her staff. Minimal casualties. She turned back to the delegation. Gentlemen, you asked about our methods. This is our method. We don't accept acceptable losses when it comes to innocent lives. Every prisoner we can save, we save. Every civilian we can protect, we protect. And anyone who stands in the way of that protection gets to discover why Earth's apex predators never went extinct. As alarms began sounding throughout the station, Chen checked her displays again. I'm afraid our meeting will have to continue later. Long-range sensors show Vorgan reinforcements heading for the Andorian system. We need to intercept them before they reach civilian populations. Admiral, Kethril said quickly, before you go, what do you want from the galaxy when this is over? What are humanity's terms? Chen paused at the doorway, her expression unreadable. We want what every species should want, to live in peace with our neighbors. But understand this, humanity's definition of peace is simple. As long as no one is threatening innocent people, we're perfectly happy to stay in our own corner of the galaxy and mind our own business. And if someone does threaten innocence, then they'll learn why the most dangerous thing in the galaxy isn't a Vorgan extinction fleet or a cosmic disaster, Chen replied. It's a human who's decided that someone needs to be stopped. As the human fleet departed for their next battle, Kethril and his delegation were left to contemplate a galaxy where the balance of power had shifted not to the strongest or most advanced civilization, but to the one that simply refused to accept that evil could not be defeated. The age of galactic politics was ending. The age of human justice had begun. 6 months after the first human ship appeared in galactic space, the war was over. The last Vorgan stronghold, a fortress moon that had been considered impregnable, floated dead in space. Its massive weapons batteries, once capable of cracking planets, now served as monuments to the speed and totality of human victory. Around the fortress, a fleet of human vessels maintained silent vigil, not celebrating, but simply present, like gravekeepers in a cosmic cemetery. Emperor Zorthak the Destroyer, the last surviving Vorgan warlord, sat in chains aboard the human command ship, Retribution. His ornate armor, crafted from the bones of extinct species, had been stripped away, leaving him exposed and small in the sterile human cell. Through the transparent aluminum walls, he could see human soldiers moving with purposeful efficiency, already planning the distribution of relief supplies to liberated worlds. Admiral Sarah Chen entered the holding area carrying a simple metal chair. She set it down across from the former emperor and sat, studying him with the same detached interest a scientist might show a particularly virulent bacteria sample. "Emperor," she said, her voice carrying no emotion whatsoever. I demand to be treated according to the galactic warfare conventions, Zorthak snarled, though his voice lacked its former authority. I am a head of state. I have rights. You do have rights, Chen agreed. The same rights you gave to the 17 billion people your forces murdered. The same rights you granted to the Centaurian children who were killed for sport. The same rights you extended to the Andromedan scientists who tried to surrender. She leaned back in her chair, completely relaxed. Which is to say, none at all. You cannot simply execute me, Zorthak protested. The Galactic Council will never accept such brutality from your primitive species. Execute you? Chen seemed genuinely surprised. Who said anything about execution? That would be far too easy. She gestured to a wall display that showed reconstruction efforts across formerly Vorgan-controlled space. Human engineering teams worked alongside grateful alien civilians, building schools and hospitals where prison camps had once stood. You're going to help rebuild what you destroyed, Chen explained calmly. Every single world your forces devastated, every civilization you tried to erase. You're going to spend the rest of your very long life making amends. I'll die first, Zorthak spat. No, you won't. Chen's smile was terrifying in its complete absence of warmth. Human medical technology is quite advanced. We've already extended your lifespan by about 3,000 years. Consider it a gift. The color drained from Zorthak's face as the implications hit him. You cannot. We can, and we have. Welcome to the rest of your life, Emperor. Every day of which you'll spend helping the survivors of your genocide rebuild their homes. Think of it as an extended education in empathy. Chen stood to leave, then paused. Oh, and just so you know, you're not the first tyrant humanity has dealt with. We have a very long history of making examples of people who think genocide is an acceptable policy tool. Ask any human about someone named Hitler or Stalin or Pol Pot. We remember our monsters, and we make sure they're remembered correctly. As Chen exited the holding area, she nearly collided with Dr. Yeth, the Andromedan xenobiologist who had been studying human behavior since their arrival. His multiple arms writhed with nervous energy as he clutched a data pad. Admiral, he said breathlessly, I need to speak with you about my findings, about humanity's psychological profile. Chen glanced at her chronometer. Make it quick, Doctor. The Galactic Council wants a full briefing in an hour. That's exactly what I need to warn you about, Yeth said urgently. Admiral, the Council is planning to contain humanity. They're terrified of your species' capabilities, and they believe we're the next threat the galaxy needs to worry about, Chen finished. Doctor, we've been monitoring their communications since day one. We know exactly what they're planning. Yeth's tentacles went rigid with shock. You've been spying on the Galactic Council? Doctor, we've been spying on everyone. The Vorgans didn't become a galactic threat overnight. They had allies, supporters, enablers. Half the Council was secretly trading with them right up until they started losing. Did you think we wouldn't notice? She began walking toward the command center, forcing Yeth to scurry to keep up. Your species sees politics and warfare as separate things. Humans learned long ago that they're the same thing with different tools. While you were holding committee meetings about post-war reconstruction, we were identifying every council member who profited from Vorgan atrocities. What do you plan to do with that information? Yeth asked, though he was afraid he already knew. Nothing, unless we have to. But understand this, Doctor. Humanity didn't come to this galaxy to become its rulers. We came because people were dying, and someone needed to stop it. But if the galactic powers that be decide that the people who stopped genocide are the real problem, then we'll remind them why that's a very poor decision. They entered the command center, where the tactical display showed the current state of galactic politics. Human forces had withdrawn to defensive positions around liberated worlds, But their intelligence networks had spread like a spider's web through civilized space. Every military base, every government facility, every corporate headquarters was under constant surveillance. "Doctor," Chen continued, "your psychological profile of humanity is incomplete. You've been studying us as individual organisms, but that's not how we function in crisis situations. When threatened, humans don't just fight. We become a hive mind focused on a single objective: survival of our species and our values." The display zoomed in to show Earth itself, where massive construction projects were transforming the planet into something unprecedented. Orbital shipyards, planetary defense grids, and research facilities that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever seen. "Every human on that planet is working toward the same goal," Chen explained. "Not because we're forced to, but because we choose to. Because we understand that the alternative to victory is extinction." "But surely now that the Vorgans are defeated—" "The Vorgans were just the first test," Chen interrupted. "Doctor, your galaxy has produced dozens of species that eventually turned to genocide as a solution to their problems. The Vorgans were just the most recent. What makes you think they'll be the last?" Before Yeth could respond, the communication array chimed with an incoming priority message. The holographic image of Ambassador Kethril appeared, looking haggard and worried. "Admiral Chen," the ambassador began formally, "the Galactic Council has reached a decision regarding humanity's continued presence in galactic affairs. The Council formally requests that human forces withdraw to the Sol system and limit their expansion beyond their home territory." Chen nodded as if she had expected this exact message. "I see. And the enforcement mechanism for this request?" "A coalition of 12 species has agreed to jointly patrol the borders of human space. Any human vessel found outside the designated zone will be considered hostile and dealt with accordingly." "And the liberated worlds? The former Vorgan territories? Who's going to protect them from the next aggressive empire?" Kethril's image flickered slightly. "The Council has voted to establish a new peacekeeping force drawn from member species. Humanity's unique approach to warfare is no longer required." Chen was quiet for a long moment, then smiled, an expression that made Dr. Yeth's skin crawl. "Ambassador, please convey the following message to the Council. Humanity appreciates their concern and will be happy to comply with their request. All human military forces will withdraw to Sol system space within 72 hours. Kethril looked surprised and relieved. "That's very reasonable of you, Admiral. The Council will be pleased." "I'm sure they will." Chen out. As soon as the transmission ended, Dr. Yeth stared at Chen in disbelief. "You're actually withdrawing? Just like that?" "Of course," Chen replied pleasantly. "Humans are very reasonable people, Doctor. When someone asks us politely to leave, we leave." "But what about—" Chen held up a hand to silence him, then activated the ship's general communication system. Her voice reached every human vessel, every human soldier, every human civilian throughout the galaxy. "Attention all human personnel. Operation Homecoming is now in effect. All forces will withdraw to Sol system in accordance with Galactic Council directive. Civilian evacuation protocols are active. Any non-human requesting passage to safety will be granted immediate transport." She turned back to Yeth, who was watching the tactical display in growing horror. The withdrawal was precise and orderly, but it was also taking people with it. Millions of alien civilians, survivors of Vorgan occupation, refugees from destroyed worlds, anyone who had requested human protection, were being evacuated along with the human forces. "Admiral," Yeth whispered, "you're taking them with you." "Doctor, we told the Council we would withdraw human forces to Sol system. We never said we would abandon the people we've sworn to protect." Chen's expression hardened. "If the galaxy wants us gone, fine. But we're not leaving defenseless civilians to be slaughtered by the next empire that decides genocide is profitable. The Council won't stand for this. They'll see it as an act of aggression. The Council had their chance to prove they could protect innocent people, Chen replied coldly. They failed spectacularly. They watched the Vorgans commit genocide for decades without meaningful intervention. They only called us when it was too late to save most of the victims. The display showed the massive convoy forming around Earth, human ships escorting millions of grateful refugees toward humanity's home system. The sight was staggering, entire species choosing to abandon their ancestral territories rather than trust their safety to the same galactic powers that had failed them before. What happens when the next aggressive species emerges? Yeth asked desperately. What happens when the galaxy needs human intervention again? Chen smiled, and this time there was genuine warmth in the expression. Doctor, humanity learned something important during this conflict. We learned that we're not the only species willing to fight for what's right. Look at your evacuation list. Yeth checked his datapad and gasped. Among the evacuees were thousands of Andromedan scientists, Centaurian engineers, Krillian soldiers, and representatives from dozens of other species. Every person on that list volunteered to come with us, Chen explained. Not because they're afraid of their own governments, but because they believe in what humanity stands for. They want to build something better. What are you planning? We're going to do exactly what we told the Council, withdraw to Sol System and stay there. But Sol System is about to become a very interesting place. All those refugees, all that knowledge, all that determination to prevent another genocide. We're going to build something the galaxy has never seen before. The tactical display zoomed out to show the galaxy in its entirety. Human forces were indeed withdrawing, but the intelligence networks remained active. Every potential threat was being monitored. Every emerging crisis was being tracked. The next time someone decides to commit genocide, Chen said quietly, they won't be facing just humanity. They'll be facing everyone who remembers what we did here, everyone who believes that innocent people deserve protection. And if the Galactic Council tries to stop you? Chen's smile became positively predatory. Doctor, the Council just learned a very important lesson about the difference between being feared and being respected. The Vorgans were feared. Look how that ended for them. Humanity, well, let's see which path the Council chooses. As the last human ship disappeared into hyperspace, carrying its cargo of refugees and defenders toward Sol System, the galaxy was left to contemplate its choice. The monsters had been defeated, the monster killers had withdrawn when asked, and the innocent had been given sanctuary. But watching from their new home around Sol's yellow light, humanity and its allies waited. Not for conquest or empire, but for the next call for help from someone who needed protection from the dark. The galaxy had sent a distress call to the wrong species, they thought. They were wrong about that too. Humanity was exactly the right species for the job they didn't know they needed done.